I was a rodeo cowboy, and I quit in 1965. I was a bullfighter and bull rider. And I went out to Hollywood to do stunts. And that was at the end of the heyday of Westerns, and that's where I met Walt. Walt had been a rodeo cowboy way back, 40s and 50s. He was a turtle first, then an RCA member, and then a gold card PRCA member. So he and I had a lot in common with rodeo and talked quite a bit, and shooting all the Westerns. And I just noticed that he didn't let Hollywood change him. He stayed cowboy. He wasn't going to let Hollywood change him at all. And I found him so interesting because of his art ability. When he was rodeoing, he did the Buckboard magazine, which in those days, that was the rodeo sports news of its day. And he did the cartoons for him. And he did a whole book that he has put out of those cartoons. And some of them are still relevant today with the modern cowboys. And he knew rodeo back and forth. So, and then he naturally got into doing stunts with the heyday of the Westerns. He doubled Audie Murphy and was friends with Gene Autry and Roy Rogers and such as that. And he got to meet Charles Russell and those kind of people. So, but it just didn't let him change him. He still stayed cowboy. And when he later got into painting art, he became quite prominent. And I didn't know exactly, how famous he was, except I found out later he had paintings in galleries, private collections, and museums. And his stuff started selling for, the high bidder showed up. He was actually born in Canada of American parents. And then when he moved to California, he worked as a packer and trail guide, everything to do with horses, and still rodeoed. He and Richard Farnsworth, who's an inductee, they rodeoed together, Madison Square Garden, Denver, Los Angeles, and some big shows. And then that's what we had in common besides stunts. And then later on, art, his art, even though he was pretty famous at it, he called it his sideline. He still considered himself a cowboy and a stuntman. But and even I worked with him when he was a little bit older. We were doing a picture at a laundry one day, and he and another stuntman were up in this office building with a big glass window, and I think a shotgun shot him or something. They were playing gangsters, and they got blown out of there and fell about 15 feet, and he would have thought he was 20 years old. I mean, he'd sell out every trip. And even though they would dress him up in a suit, put a fedora on him, and give him a machine gun, in his mind, he was wearing a cowboy hat and toting a 6-shooter. He was still a cowboy. He started as a turtle, then he was an RCA member, and of course when I met him, I was RCA. I never did. When I quit, I dropped my card and didn't keep going. But that's what we had in common. Was
what all events did he do? Did you know?
He did bareback riding and bull riding. He's on the small side, so he's like me. I didn't have enough lead in his butt to keep bulldogging. Well, anything on a horse. If it was robbing a stagecoach, driving steers, being an outlaw and getting shot off of a horse, doing a fall for an actor off of a horse. He doubled Audie Murphy and quite a few other actors too. And in the heyday of Westerns, they were working every day, and they did it the hard way. It wasn't computerized. It wasn't machinery helping. It was moccasin blowouts, we called them. He dressed up. In those days, white guys double Indians. And we'd dress up as Indians and get blown off a horse, and you're going to lose a moccasin if you hit the ground hard enough, and we lost our moccasins pretty often. You can be lucky and not, you know, but it shows up after a while. But he physically stayed in pretty good shape, but he did start to limit himself as to what he would do later on. But he'd figure out what he could get away with and still do it. And he could be counted on. I mean, he was going to go at it when he went at it. He's more of a storyteller. He'd sit around telling stories and entertaining people, and he played guitar, he played Western music, and he's had a few little albums out and stuff with Western music. But he strictly stayed cowboy. He didn't let all that Hollywood flu influence him. And it's hard not to do. I've seen it affect people, the fame and fortune and all that stuff, and it just did not affect him. He stayed cowboy. He dressed like a cowboy, talked like a cowboy, and he was cowboy all the way. They'll ask you to do stuff that's humanly impossible, but they have seen it in their mind, and it's Hollywood. They'll ask you, but you have to learn to say no. And Walt was smart enough to say no sometimes. I guess he was just a natural. He started young as a drawing, and like when we were doing that thing where I told you he blew out of that office building, it was at an old laundry, or a laundry. But anyway, while we were there, he took a sheet of, you know, those cardboard sheets they put in a shirt, and he's always sketching. So he sketched out a thing with all kind of rodeo scenes in a big circle and a clown in the middle, and signed it and gave it to me, and I treasure it. You know, it's a treasure to me. But he was always scribbling around, and I don't know how soon he started his paintings, but they're pretty intricate paintings, and they've hung in like the Russell Museum in Montana, of one I know of. So they have hung in museums and all, and have been, and some artists I've talked to know the name, but he didn't care about being famous. He still called that a sideline, but he had talent, a lot of storytelling, but he'd do it on canvas too. And he'd lived it. I mean, if he did a stagecoach scene, he'd robbed a stagecoach. If it was robbing a bar, a bank, or he had done it in the movies, so he had lived it. He had had Indian fights and cavalry scenes, and when you actually live it, or in the costumes, and you get the feeling of it, I'm sure it helped his artwork because he'd been there, done that. So he was able to transfer it over to his paintings.
Well, that the rodeo cowboys would get a chuckle out of.
Like the comments other cowboys were making, if a guy got bucked off in the middle of the arena and there's only one mud puddle and he hit it, he'd have 2 or 3 comments. There'd be a guy at the gate making a comment, and a guy behind the sheep making a comment, and then they'd have a stock contractor of a horse just blowing up like crazy and the guy's riding him. And the stock contractor saying, "Oh, that horse is having a bad day. He's been kind of sickly, so that's why he's riding him." You know, those the relevant things that would happen today. You know, and in fact, the museum has one of his books. And one time when I came through the museum here, they had I don't know if it was a Monty Montana exhibition or something, and they had one of his cartoons in the display. And that's when I said, he needs to be nominated. There's an award thing out there for Western actors and stuntmen and such as that. And he was one of the recipients of the Golden Boot Award. And then he was, I think he's had some art awards. I don't know specifically the name of them. And then he was a lifetime member of the Stuntman Association also. And so that was another thing we had in common. They made me a lifetime member too, and it's pretty much an honor. They don't. These aren't guys that mess around much. And he has a son who, unfortunately, could not come receive the award for him. He's had some illness, and I talked to him quite a bit, and he knew that I had nominated him, so he requested that I receive the award for him. And I'm not sure he completely understood everything, but he has a lot of Walt stuff, and he wants to donate some to the museum. So I'm going to talk to your curator this evening, and he has an old saddle that he used in a lot of westerns, and then some paintings that he still has. And I don't know what kind of letters and all, but I know he received letters from Roy Rogers and Gene Autry and people like that. So whatever he is willing to donate for the archives of the museum, I'm going out there in January in a motorhome, so I'll have room to load it up. And when I come home, heading back to Mississippi, I'll just come by here and drop it off. So, and maybe some more pictures and stuff that he went to get the stuff to send to me for this, and I think it was hot, and because of his illness, he couldn't do quite what he wanted to. So when I go out in January, I'll be able to go with him, and of course whatever he'd like to donate, I'm sure the museum could use. I think just being a cowboy, the fact that he stayed a cowboy in all of his, from the trail ride guiding and hunting guiding, onto the ranching, the stunt work, the rodeos, and all through his life, he was always a cowboy. He just never changed. He dressed cowboy, he talked cowboy, he thought like a cowboy, and he had the heart of a cowboy. And being a famous artist didn't mean anything to him. Monetary, maybe, but he was doing what he liked to do, and that was cowboy stuff. I appreciated the fact that he started in rodeo way back, and it had to be tough. Traveling and everything else had to be more difficult. And he and Farnsworth, and then transitioning into doing stunts, and it's like, well, let me get out of this pan here and jump in that pan. Maybe it's a little hotter. So, and those were the kind of, because Farnsworth was like Walt. They rodeoed together, and then they did stunt together. And Farnsworth, before he became an actor, 40 years as a stuntman, a top stuntman. And Walt was the same way, top stuntman, and became an artist. So I guess some people just have more talent than others, and they left me out. I was there 32 years. I took early retirement at 55. Now Walt stayed there. He stayed and kept working a little bit, after. But he would be careful what he tried to do. But he stayed there until he died in 2010. I did about 250 pictures. Predator, Deer Hunter, Casino, A-Team. Not too long ago, I found out that I'd worked on it for about 3 years and done as many episodes as anybody, because a guy from Ireland wanted to do an interview with me, and we did about a 20-minute interview about A-Team. Of course, the first thing they want to know is, some people say those actors are in there. Well, I'm not going to talk bad about the actors. They're actors, and they're a little different, and you just let them get by with it. That's why they're actors. So I don't have to do that. They do. So, but no, they all. I got along with all of them.
About this Hall of Fame.
He would be very humbly proud to be in this group. And I think any of them would be proud to be around him. He was that kind of a guy. Like a Leon Coffey. How can you not like Leon Coffey? I mean, you just got to beat your head against the wall if you don't like him. The guy, he's just likable. More or less, he just hinted around Jack, don't change, just be yourself. That was the way he was too. Don't let this Hollywood stuff, frou-frou stuff change you. You're a country boy doing a job, and you go home and wait for the check, and when you get the check, don't worry about it anymore. Forget about it. I can't remember the names of some of the pictures I worked on because I got the check. And I forgot about it after that. And then some of them I just wouldn't want to go see anyway. You do a job on a picture that it's not something I'd watch.
I'm sure there was some good ones in there.
Yeah, there were some good ones in there. Predator was quite an experience because the whole crew from A-Team and the effects guys too, we'd all worked together on A-Team for 3 years, and so we were a group together. Well, when we went to do Predator, we were doing 2 and 3 major stunts at a time. Normally, a major stunt like setting a man on fire, that's a one-man deal, and we were setting 3 or 4 guys at a time on fire. They set me up on top of a building, put a bomb on my back, and you couldn't do that in the United States because of rules. And I had the button, blew the bomb off, and the fire blew up, and it burnt. I had gel on for the fire. It burnt the paint off of my rifle. And then I did a fall about 15 feet, and they put me out. But it's like, it was a phenomenal. Well, we went in the jungle, a green jungle, and when we left, there was a pile of ashes and some parrots around there that had their feathers singed when they were flying over because we were blowing up and burning everything. It was pretty interesting show to work on.
All right.
And then the deer hunter, I couldn't wait to get out of there. In fact, I was going to leave. I was supposed to be there 3 weeks, and we were in Bangkok for a month and still hadn't gotten to the jungle. And I went to the producers. I said, man, I've got things to do. I told my wife I was going to be gone 3 weeks, and she's wondering where I am. They said, well, how about you stay and we'll send for her? And they sent her a plane ticket and brought her over there, and I stayed another month.
Oh, boy.
So, but it was okay, but we were back in the jungle by the Burma border, and there weren't a lot of hospitals around. So if something happened, we were coming 80 feet out of a helicopter doing 40 knots, and I hit the water. It was like hitting cement. In fact, it gave me a little concussion. We were heading back to Bangkok, and I didn't know. I thought we were in Los Angeles. But it didn't hurt me bad, but I was kind of, I'm normally goofy, but I was a little goofy for a little while. My buddy Chuck, the other stunt guy, said, Jack, you better straighten out or you're going to be going to the hospital. And I started coming around waking up. But yeah, it was an interesting life, but I'm glad I did it, but I'm glad I'm home. When I retired, they said, what are you retiring for? You could keep working. I said, I'm going home to Louisiana and get something to eat. I'm going to get some real food.